For decades, the Whitaker family existed in a pocket of West Virginia that felt older than maps. The hills kept them folded inside green summers and hard winters, and life moved in circles small enough to fit between the porch steps and the creek out back. People nearby saw the same faces year after year, not as a spectacle, but as part of the landscape, the way you notice a fence without wondering who built it. They survived more than they lived, and Betty carried most of that surviving on her shoulders. She cooked, cleaned, counted pills, counted dogs, counted the men when they wandered too far toward trouble. Together was their shelter long before a tin roof arrived. When Mark Leda first pointed a camera at that together, the world believed it was watching something newly discovered, yet the family knew they were only being looked at from a different angle. Viewers asked questions that grew louder than the creek rhythm. Some laughed. Some felt protective. Others accused Mark of taking advantage, not understanding that the first list Betty spoke, roof, siding, cabinets, floor, were not props but repairs that kept the house from dissolving. Mark returned many times, and each return added another layer of weight. Grocery bags, rides to Walmart. Money slipped carefully into pockets that had once been empty enough to whistle in. Friday had become the new horizon people talked about. Family court again, another doorway the Whitakers hoped would open. Kathy heard from Larry that the last visit to the courthouse left Betty and him waiting in the hallway like dogs on a bench while Eric Carroll's attorney was inside. Preferential treatment, Larry called it, and the phrase traveled across the internet before any human voice in the hills could defend itself. To this day, the family had not even had a phone call with Lorraine, Ray, and Timmy, who were taken months earlier. 3 months without hearing a familiar fragment of talking, and fragments were the only currency the Whitakers ever understood. Mark believed the family were better off after meeting him. Yet better off can be complicated when custody becomes part of the conversation. Kathy wondered whether Eric Carroll would take custody of Timmy and bring him home to Georgia on Friday, because he was making Eric rich. Eric had spoken it over and over and gone through every hoop there is, and Betty and Larry had no attorney of their own to walk them inside the courtroom itself. Mark had helped tremendously with money and attention, but money does not argue in family court. People argue there, attorneys argue there, and the Whitakers were not allowed to go in to hear the arguing about their own family. The porch still held the old rhythm, even while the new rhythm pressed from outside. Ray slept on the living room sofa all year long, and the dog liked the bed too. Betty opened and closed the cabinets again so Mark could hear the solid sound again, and said she was proud. Lorraine did not talk much, but she touched the countertop again. Larry hoped the truck would finally run again. Kenneth waved from trailer next door again, minding his own business the way the hills taught him. Mark asked the truth to be told, and Timmy laughed inside, guarding the remote like metal. Attention had improved the quality of their life a bit, Mark believed, and compared to the first visit, it was true. They looked healthier glow to themselves, more energetic, straighter faces. Kathy highly doubted that the December court had anything to do with money because of the open investigation by the West Virginia State Police involving Eric Carroll and Patrick Rohr for financial fraud against Timmy Rain and his family. We all heard the September news about individuals falsely accepting donations on behalf of the Whitaker family. And if indictments might come out this month, why would Eric be in court for money? Right? This was family court that had to do with custody of the family. Yet Eric's attorney was in there while Betty and Larry were left out in the hallway. That gap between two rhythms grew wider each visit, and Mark perhaps did not want the town to be known because fame arrived anyway with strangers driving guided by fascination. Mark stepped outside again toward the beautiful creek, asking to be shown the landscape that reminded visitors from the south of Tennessee and northwest Georgia, North Carolina, northern Alabama. Anybody from the south would love having a house put on this little creek, he said, and Betty agreed by tapping the siding again, as if beautiful mint, warm mint safe meant the house would not fall down on Lorraine in her sleep. The family watched television whenever they wished, any game, anything, and Timmy thanked Mark for the chair he bought. Kenneth said he was fixing candy and stuff like that, laughing, and Mark wondered who actually kept them fed now that money arrived in waves like Second Family Online. The New Horizon Friday waited beyond the hills like a question mark carried from California to West Virginia, where the family had learned to rely on one another without cameras long before YouTube comments arrived protective and cruel in the same sentence. Mark believed they were better off at the end of the day, but responsibility must learn to follow the quieter beat of the creek instead of the louder beat of strangers. Recognition grows heavier each return, and Mark wondered whether returning with money was enough to protect the rhythm that had kept them together for decades. Betty spoke the list like mother counting fingers after child falls, making sure nothing missing. Ray laughed about sandwiches, bologna, or whatever tomatoes, all that, and said he had no idea what dinner would be. Lorraine did not talk much, but her hands rested on the rail. Larry hoped the truck would finally be fixed. Kenneth practiced love by minding his own business. Timmy guarded boundaries with remote metal. Mark recognized the roof and siding and cabinets and floor and chair he bought. Attention improved their quality a bit, he believed, and compared to the first visit it was true. What happened this time would later leave everyone in tears because weight from the internet never matched the creek rhythm that never changed much with time. Friday, January 9th would decide whether Eric Carroll ended up with custody of Timmy and whether Betty and Larry finally got to talk with their family members by phone or visit. The question is why Eric's attorney gets to go in that courtroom, while Betty and Larry have to stay in the hallway, and why they haven't even gotten a phone call with Lorraine and Timmy and Ray. No proof of anything, nothing but Eric Carroll's word. Mark believed the family were better off after meeting him. Yet better off can be fragile when custody is dissected frame by strangers who forgot that real tears deserve real compassion. Betty smiled. Maybe for the first time in her whole life, she could smile about something about her in those cabinets. Ray survived winter knee. Larry measured love by the truck. Kenneth waved from trailer next door. Lorraine touched the countertop. Timmy guarded the remote. Mark recognized. Recognition became louder than sadness, and that loudness would later leave everyone in tears because gap between two rhythms grew wider. Internet rhythm waiting outside, and creek rhythm that never changed much with time. We can agree that this story is not about winning or losing custody, but about fairness and humanity. If you follow the Whitaker family, stand on the side of kindness, demand equal treatment for every family in any courthouse, and remember that compassion should be louder than any accusation written by strangers. Comment below, what do you think? The days leading up to Friday began stretching like a long wire pulled tight across two states. In West Virginia, the Whitaker porch kept its usual shape, but the calendar inside Kathy's head had started ticking louder than the dog's. She remembered how Betty used to measure time only by weather, whether the creek would flood, whether the heater had enough wood, whether Ray's knee would survive another cold season. Now time was measured by court dates and attorney letters, by an investigation that hovered over the family name like a second tin roof made of paper. The family did not fully understand those papers, yet they understood the silence that had followed since September, when Lorraine and Timmy and Ray were taken into custody by authorities. Silence is easy to understand when it is the only voice that answers. Larry told Kathy again what happened on December 9th at the Raleigh County Courthouse in Beckley. He said they walked down there expecting progress, expecting at least to sit inside the courtroom and hear the fragments of their own story spoken by professionals. Instead, they were left in the hallway on a bench and treated like dogs while everybody else was inside. The phrase "treated like dogs" became the bridge between the hills and the internet, and Kathy carried that bridge carefully because she knew words can bruise as hard as winter steps. Betty and Larry had not even been able to have a phone call with the 3 family members in months. Mark had returned many times with money and groceries. Yet groceries do not dial telephones and money does not open family court doors. Kenneth stood next door in a newer trailer, watching the Adult Protection Service workers come and go the way neighbors watch thunderstorms from a window. Kathy wondered whether Kenneth understood the preferential treatment Eric Carroll seemed to receive. Eric had a laser beam focus on getting custody of Timmy and bringing him home to Georgia because he was making Eric rich, people online said. Mark believed the family were better off after meeting him. Yet better off becomes complicated when attorneys begin arguing about a child who once guarded the remote control inside the living room. Kathy did not want to judge Mark on what he was doing, but she wanted to judge the system that allowed Eric's attorney to go inside, while Betty and Larry were not allowed to enter at all. The investigation by the West Virginia State Police involving Eric Carroll and Patrick Rohr for financial fraud felt odd to Kathy, because it was open and unresolved. We all heard the September news about individuals falsely accepting donations on behalf of the Whitaker family, and Kathy believed that if indictments might come out this month, why would Eric be in court for money, right? This was family court that had to do with custody of the family. Yet Eric's attorney was inside like a guest with better manners than the hosts. Hosts in the hills do not understand that kind of guest. Kathy remembered how Larry said someone came out of the courtroom and told Betty and him they would never see a dime out of Eric Carroll. Whether this was about money or custody, whatever it was, fairness should not be measured by who owns an attorney. Mark stepped back onto the porch in Kathy's memory again and again. She remembered the glow he noticed on Betty's face when she opened the cabinets. Proud, maybe for the first time in her whole life, she received something about her. She remembered Ray laughing about sandwiches, bologna, or whatever tomatoes, all that, and saying he had no idea what dinner would be. She remembered Lorraine touching the countertop without much talking, Timmy thanking Mark for the chair he bought, Kenneth claiming he was fixing candy, and stuff like that. These were fragments that built the documentary Rhythm Mark carried from California, mostly out in California, to West Virginia, where together was everything. Kathy believed attention improved their quality of life a bit. Yet attention can also become a form of courtroom paper louder than the Creek rhythm that never changed much with time. The core family remained Ray and Betty and Lorraine, and Timmy, supported by familiarity and routine. Larry seemed much more involved in the family and supported the core family a lot. Kenneth practiced love by minding his own business without belittling the older vehicles parked outside. Mark practiced responsibility by returning again and reiterating he helped tremendously. Kathy practiced responsibility by asking questions the internet did not want to hear. The internet wanted Friday to finish the story like an episode, yet documentary style does not finish easily. It lives inside pockets of real people. Kathy imagined the January courthouse in Beckley filling with strangers again, protective and cruel YouTube comments waiting outside like laser beams of fascination. She did not want to stop the happiness growing on Betty's face or stop the hope Larry carried about the truck that needed fixing. She wanted to stop the silence that prevented even a phone call with Lorraine and Timmy and Ray. Mark believed the family were better off after meeting him. Yet better off requires the ability to talk with your own family members. Ability is not a gift Mark can buy. It is a right every family should own without hoops. Eric jumped through every hoop there is, Larry said, but Betty and Larry were jumping through a different hoop that never let them inside the courtroom itself. The creek outside carried the sound of the South that reminded visitors of Tennessee and Northwest Georgia, North Carolina, Northern Alabama. Anybody from the South would love having a house put on this little creek, Mark said in Kathy's memory. Yet houses do not argue custody cases and cabinets do not testify. Testimony must be spoken by people who understand fragments and understand papers at the same time. Betty did not talk much in the Hills language, but her smile testified more than any attorney could see. Kathy believed attention improved their quality of life a bit. Yet attention from the internet sometimes forgets that real tears deserve real compassion. Compassion should be louder than any accusation written by strangers. Larry admitted to Kathy that December court felt like September and August when Eric made all them trips down there over and over adult protection service workers that he seemed to know on a first-name basis. Relationship with them looked very tight, Larry said, and Kathy wondered whether extraordinary American life could grow from preferential relationships alone. Mark believed the family were better off after meeting him because he helped tremendously with money in his pockets. Yet money does not replace fairness in any family court. Replace fairness is not allowed by Safety of the Hills. Safety of the Hills means staying close, arguing, laughing, relying on one another on the porch day after day. Friday, January 9th, waited beyond those hills like a different rhythm Kathy carried from California through a screen. Kathy did not want to narrate directions or give any hooks. She wanted the script of real life to be told in lists Betty counted. Roof, siding cabinets, floor, truck, chair Mark bought. She wanted the script of silence to be broken by a phone call with Lorraine and Timmy and Ray. Mark asked the truth to be told, and Timmy laughed inside, guarding the remote like metal. Mark believed they looked healthier glow to themselves, energetic, straighter faces. Kathy believed they deserved to be treated better than dogs in any hallway of Beckley-Raleigh County Courthouse. The family remained together through it all, supported by familiarity and routine beyond the hills of West Virginia, where together was everything. Mark believed the family were better off at the end of the day. Yet better off requires the ability to talk with your own family members and requires fairness that cannot be dissected frame by strangers. Kathy turned the video production inside her memory again and again, reiterating that this was video production by Mark Leda, mostly out in California. Yet West Virginia was not California, and Georgia was not West Virginia, and custody was not cabinets and silence, was not music, and real tears were not episodes. Comment below. Stand with humanity first. Demand equal treatment in every courthouse. Protect vulnerable families without turning them into subjects. And let compassion be the language that crosses any hill or state line. The courthouse in Beckley had started to feel like the center of a storm that none of the Whitaker family invited. Kathy kept repeating the names to herself, so she would not forget who this fight was really about: Timmy, Lorraine, Ray. The three figures who once sat on that same porch and followed routines that did not change much with time. She remembered Larry describing how December 9th unfolded, how Betty and him walked through the courthouse doors expecting to be treated like everybody else, expecting at least the dignity of a seat inside the courtroom. Instead, they waited in the hallway on a bench and felt the progress stop before it had even taken a first breath. The phrase he used still burned in Kathy's mind: treated like dogs. Kathy believed no family should have to carry that sentence home with them. Mark had gone back to West Virginia right after that December hearing, and Kathy watched the new video production again and again, trying to understand what actually happens when a camera meets a custody case. The internet believed it already knew the ending, yet the ending had not arrived. Eric Carroll's attorney was inside that family courtroom, while Betty and Larry were not allowed to enter. Kathy wondered what kind of system creates a door that opens for one side and stays closed for the other. Mark believed attention had improved the quality of the Whitaker lives a bit, and compared to the first visit, that was true. Roof, siding, cabinets, floor, repairs that made the house appear steadier than maps. But steadiness built from ordinary objects does not guarantee fairness when attorneys begin arguing about a child. Kathy thought about the September news that we all heard, about the open investigation by the West Virginia State Police involving Eric Carroll and Patrick Rohr for financial fraud on behalf of the Whitaker family. If indictments might come out this month, she wondered again, why would Eric be in court over money, right? This was family court that had to do with custody, not with donations slipped into pockets Mark carried from California, mostly out in California. The blend Mark put into those videos became unique because West Virginia was not California, and Georgia was not West Virginia, and custody was not cabinets. Kathy did not want to judge Mark on what he was doing, yet she wanted to judge the gap between two rhythms. The Creek rhythm that never changed much with time, and the internet rhythm that changed everything shifted. The core family on the porch remained Ray and Betty and Lorraine and Timmy, supported by familiarity and routine day after day. Larry seemed much more involved in the family and supported the core family a lot. Kenneth lived next door in the newer trailer and practiced love by minding his own business without belittling the older vehicles parked outside. Lorraine did not talk much, but she touched the countertop inside, letting her hands speak for her. Ray laughed about sandwiches, bologna, or whatever tomatoes, all that, and said he had no idea what dinner would be. Timmy guarded the remote inside like metal and thanked Mark for the chair he bought. Mark believed they looked healthier glow to themselves, energetic, straighter faces, and Kathy believed those smiles were not props, but proof that help from cameras could matter. Still, the silence surrounding the custody issue grew heavier than any gift. Kathy imagined Betty counting the repairs again, like mother counting fingers after child falls, making sure nothing missing. Roof, siding cabinets, floor, truck, chair Mark bought. She imagined Larry counting attorney letters he could not afford. She imagined Lorraine counting the television voices whenever they wished, any game, anything, while Timmy slept on the living room sofa all year long with the dog liking the bed too. Counting became their shelter because they had not even had a phone call with the 3 family members taken in months since September. Mark had returned many times with money, yet money does not dial telephones. Kathy believed the system should help them get a visit, help them get a phone call, help them get treated better than dogs in any hallway of Beckley, Raleigh County Courthouse. Mark asked in the video for the truth to be told and paused it again and again, reiterating that this was video production by Mark Leda, mostly out in California. Kathy watched that pause like a breath held between 2 states. She did not want narration directions or hooks. She wanted the script of real life to be told in fragments the family understood. Eric had jumped through every hoop. There is claiming he was still fighting for custody of Timmy and bringing him home to Georgia because he was making Eric rich, yet Betty and Larry were jumping through a different hoop that never let them inside the courtroom itself. Kathy wondered whether extraordinary American life could grow from preferential relationships Eric had with adult protection service workers on a first-name basis. Larry said those relationships looked very tight too, and Kathy believed tight relationships should not replace fairness in any family court. The creek outside continued carrying the sound of the South that reminded visitors of Tennessee and Northwest Georgia, North Carolina, Northern Alabama, the kind of landscape anybody from the South would love having a house put on. But Kathy knew the custody question could not be solved by landscapes or cabinets or chairs. It had to be solved by humanity inside the courthouse doors of Beckley. She imagined the January 9th hearing arriving like another winter storm measured not by weather, but by who was allowed to sit inside. Mark believed attention improved their quality of life a bit. Yet attention from the internet sometimes forgets that real tears deserve real compassion. Compassion should be louder than accusations written by strangers who dissected their life frame by frame. Larry told Kathy that when they got to December court, they expected progress in seeing their family soon. Progress stopped at the doorway, and the system told Betty and him to wait in the hallway on bench. He said they were never allowed inside the courtroom itself, and to this day, nobody, Betty, Larry, BJ, Kenny, Kenneth, have been able to even have a phone call with Lorraine and Timmy and Ray. Mark had helped tremendously with money in Whitaker pockets and helped them survive winter knee and survive organizing plates inside cabinets. Mark commended Mark's work, and Kathy commended Mark's work for making them look healthier glow to themselves, energetic, straighter faces. But Kathy did not want to stop asking why Eric Carroll's attorney gets to go inside that family courtroom while Betty and Larry were not allowed to enter. The family remained together through arguing, laughing, adapting the best they could beyond the hills of West Virginia, where together was everything. Mark believed they were better off after meeting him, and Betty believed the cabinets were the part that mattered most. Ray believed spring was coming. Larry believed Mark and his team were a new lifeline for fixing truck. Lorraine believed countertop was real. Kenneth believed minding your own business was still a form of love. Timmy believed the remote inside was metal to be guarded. Kathy believed the system should help them be treated better than dogs in any hallway of Beckley, Raleigh County Courthouse. The internet rhythm waited outside with December theories and January predictions about indictments. Maybe January 6th, maybe third Monday, January Martin Luther King Day. Kathy did not know the dates exactly, and Mark did not know the dates exactly either, but we both strive for accuracy. She only knew that silence had lasted months since September and lasted longer than any music measured by cabinet doors opening and closing. Mark had turned the camera off for a moment and stepped back and again reiterated that this was video production by Mark Leda, mostly out in California. Kathy watched that step back like proof that engines of curiosity can become responsibility. Responsibility meant not judging the family and not judging Mark on what he was doing. But Kathy judged the gap between two rhythms and believed compassion should be louder than any accusation written by strangers. When Mark left the porch that evening, the dogs followed him to the edge of the yard again. Ray waved again. Betty counted faces again. Lorraine touched the rail again and smiled without much talking. Larry hoped again. Kenneth stood next door again. Timmy guarded remote inside again. Mark recognized again the weight growing heavier in his pockets. Kathy believed the January 9th hearing would decide whether Eric Carroll took custody of Timmy and whether Betty and Larry finally got to talk with Lorraine and Timmy and Ray by phone or visit. The question remained why Eric's attorney gets to go inside that family courtroom while Betty and Larry have to stay in the hallway, and why they haven't even gotten a phone call with their family members. No proof of anything, nothing, but Eric Carroll's word. Mark believed the family were better off after meeting him, and Kathy believed better off requires fairness that cabinets and chairs cannot buy. Comment below, what do you think? Friday has not come yet, but it is going to come on January 9th, and the waiting before that day feels thicker than the mud behind the Whitaker house. Kathy speaks about the future the way Betty used to speak about winter, cautiously, counting the possibilities instead of counting repairs. For decades, the family measured time by the sound of the heater and the rise of the creek. Now the measure is a calendar square in Beckley, another family court doorway that may or may not open evenly for everyone. The door has already opened for Eric Carroll's attorney, and that single fact made the internet cry before any tears were shed in West Virginia itself. Larry told Kathy what happened the last time they stood at the Raleigh County Courthouse. He said Betty and him waited in the hallway on a bench while everybody else was inside the courtroom. They were never allowed to enter, never allowed to hear who was speaking about Lorraine and Ray and Timmy. To this day, there has not even been a phone call with those 3 family members in months. Kathy repeats that silence again and again because silence is the only part of the story that cannot be edited out of a video production. Mark believed attention had helped them tremendously, yet attention did not help them sit inside the December courtroom. Sitting inside is not a gift a producer can buy. It is supposed to be a right. Kenneth watches from next door the way neighbors watch a train they do not intend to board. He has stepped in and done more work around the core family, and Larry has been much more involved, protective in his own fragment of talking. Betty remains proud of the cabinets, roof, siding, cabinets, floor, the list she once offered to Mark with a smile that looked healthier than before. Ray still laughs about sandwiches, bologna, or whatever tomatoes, all that, and says he has no idea what dinner will be. Lorraine touches the rail and smiles without much talking, and Timmy guards the remote inside while the television fills the room with any game, anything. Together is still their shelter, even while the calendar storm circles above them. Kathy believes the family are better off after meeting Mark, and compared to the first visit, that is true. But better off can be fragile when a child's future is being dissected frame by strangers. The internet has learned to speak custody language louder than the Creek language. People online wrote about the September investigation by the West Virginia State Police involving Eric Carroll and Patrick Rohr for financial fraud on behalf of the Whitaker name. Kathy wonders whether indictments might come out this month or the third Monday in January, Martin Luther King Day. Yet she does not know the dates exactly, and Mark does not know the dates exactly either. We both strive for accuracy. What Kathy does know is that January 9th is going to come, and Friday, January 9th, is going to decide something Mark cannot control with cameras or grocery bags. Control must belong to a system willing to see vulnerable people as people again. Mark sits in California, remembering the porch in West Virginia, where anybody from the South would love having a house put on that little creek that reminds visitors of Tennessee and Northwest Georgia, North Carolina, Northern Alabama. The landscape stays patient while the calendar refuses patience. Mark admitted privately that curiosity can become responsibility, and responsibility means returning to a story even when it hurts. He does not want to judge the family, and Kathy does not want to judge Mark on what he is doing. Yet Kathy judges the gap between two rhythms and believes compassion should be louder than accusations written by strangers who forgot that real tears deserve real compassion. Betty counts faces with her eyes. Ray rocks in the chair Mark bought. Lorraine smiles without much talking. Larry hopes the truck will finally run. Kenneth stands next door, minding his own business. Timmy guards a remote inside. Mark recognizes that the family remained together through arguing and laughing, adapting the best they could beyond the hills of West Virginia, where together was everything. Kathy recognizes that January 9th is going to come and that fairness must be ready before that day knocks on the porch like another winter storm made of paper. Mark believed attention improved their quality of life a bit. Yet attention must learn to walk into courthouses wearing dignity rather than obsession. Obsession does not cook dinners or organize plates or heal knees. It only measures. Kathy believes the Whitakers should not be measured that way. The rings from the stone dropped by the internet keep moving toward Friday that is going to come on January 9th. Kathy wonders whether Elizabeth Green, who was claiming she was there at court with Betty, ever told anybody that Eric had his attorney in that family courtroom while Betty and Larry were left out in the hallway. The question remains why one side can enter and the other cannot, why silence has lasted months, and why a child named Timmy must wait for strangers to remember the meaning of humanity. Humanity must be louder than any accusation written below a video production. The family remain on the porch, supported by familiarity and routine, healthier glow to themselves, proud of cabinets and siding, hopeful about the truck that needs fixing, laughing about sandwiches and any game on television. And Kathy believes that when January 9th finally arrives, the system should already be in tears for how it treated Betty and Larry before. Treated Betty and Larry like dogs is not allowed in any beat of humanity. Kathy will keep speaking until Friday, January 9th, that is going to come. Comment below. See them first as people. Follow the facts without cruelty. Demand equal treatment in every hallway and courtroom. Protect vulnerable families without turning them into a subject. And remember that Timmy Whittaker deserves dignity that cannot be bought with donations or fascination. Let compassion be the rhythm we choose before January 9th arrives. And let kindness finish what curiosity began. Thank you for watching this video. Click here to watch another video that might interest you.